Dr. James Walker stood at his medical station, watching as another alien patient hurriedly limped past his open door. The injured creature glanced at him with three fearful eyes before quickening its pace, leaving a small trail of purple blood on the sterile white floor. James sighed and grabbed his cleaning kit. No matter how many times this happened, it still stung. "They'll come around eventually," a familiar voice said from behind him. James turned to see Commander Pierce, his fellow human and one of the few friendly faces on Outpost Station 47. "They're just not used to us yet." "It's been 3 years, sir," James replied, kneeling to clean the purple droplets. 3 years of them choosing to bleed their way to medical bay B rather than let the dangerous human treat them. He kept his voice steady, professional, but frustration crept in at the edges. The station's corridors buzzed with the usual mix of alien languages, but James had learned to pick out certain words in various tongues. Predator, Deathworlder, Killer. The whispers followed him everywhere, despite the bright blue medical insignia on his uniform and the oath he'd taken to preserve all life. A sudden commotion drew his attention. 2 maintenance workers, both tall, crystalline beings from the Axis worlds, were backing away from his medical bay. One was clearly injured, its usually transparent arm clouded with internal damage. "Please," James called out, keeping his voice soft. "I can help. That's a pressure fracture, isn't it? It must hurt terribly." He took a careful step forward, hands raised to show he carried no tools. The injured alien chittered something to its companion in their native language. James's translator picked it up. "But the archives. They say humans evolved as pack hunters. They still have the teeth, the forward-facing eyes." "You're right," James said, taking another slow step. "We were hunters. But do you know what else that gave us? The ability to track injured members of our group, to follow them for days if needed, to bring them home and heal them." He gestured to his medical bay. "Those same instincts make us excellent doctors. We don't give up on patients." The injured alien's crystalline surface flickered with uncertainty. Its companion made a sound like wind through glass, their equivalent of a worried sigh. "Did you know," James continued, "that ancient human healers would sometimes track the sick and injured for days through dangerous territory, just to offer help? We're persistent, yes, but that persistence can save lives." The injured alien's surface rippled, a sign of pain that made James's hands itch to help. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, it took a hesitant step toward him. "The human speaks truth," a new voice joined in. Medical Officer Thex, a veteran of the station's medical team, approached from down the hall. Her scaled skin shifted colors as she spoke, a sign of reluctant admission among her kind. "I have observed Dr. Walker for 3 cycles now. He is aggressive in his dedication to healing. Perhaps too aggressive by our standards. But," she paused, her color shifting again, "his patients survive at a higher rate than any other medical officer on this station." The crystalline being's injured arm was becoming more clouded, a dangerous sign. James knew he had maybe minutes before the damage became permanent. "Please," he said again, "let me help you." Something changed in the alien's faceted surface. Fear gave way to desperate hope, and finally, it moved forward into James's medical bay. Its companion followed, protective, but no longer hostile. As James began his work, carefully repairing the crystalline structure, he heard Thex speaking quietly in the hallway. "Perhaps," she said to someone, "we have misunderstood these humans. Their hunting nature. It seems they now hunt death itself." James allowed himself a small smile as he worked. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One patient at a time, he would show them that human persistence, human determination, and even human aggression could be forces for healing rather than harm. The reputation of his species might have been built on blood, but he would rebuild it with bandages, one saved life at a time. James sat in his quarters, staring at the old video playing on his wall screen. The footage was 20 years old, but he had watched it countless times. It showed humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, a moment that should have been triumphant but instead cast a long shadow over his species. The massive council chamber glowed with soft light as Earth's representatives walked in. They were wearing their best diplomatic uniforms, carrying gifts of art and music. But James could see the exact moment everything went wrong. These humans, the council elder's voice echoed through the recording, come from what our scientists classify as a death world. Their history contains over 15,000 recorded wars. Their entertainment celebrates combat. Their bodies are built for pursuit and killing. James paused the video, rubbing his tired eyes. The next part was even worse. The council's researchers had shown scenes from human history. Armies clashing, nuclear explosions, boxing matches, and even human children playing war games. Without context, without understanding, it had painted a terrifying picture. A soft chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out. To his surprise, Medical Officer Thex entered. Her scales showed the blue-green pattern of professional curiosity. "Dr. Walker," she said, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all." James gestured to a chair, then remembered her species preferred to stand. "What can I help you with? I witnessed your treatment of the crystalline being today. Your technique was aggressive, but effective." She tilted her head. "It made me curious about human medical training." James smiled slightly. "Would you like to see something from Earth's medical history?" When Thex nodded, James changed the video feed. The screen now showed an old black and white film of doctors rushing through wilderness, carrying medical supplies to remote villages. Another clip showed medical teams running toward disasters while others ran away. "This is how humans wage war against death," James explained. "We're persistent, yes, aggressive even, but we learn to use those traits to save lives." Thex's scales shifted to a pattern James had never seen before. "Your council presentation," she said slowly. "It didn't show any of this." "No." James stood up, pacing as he often did when troubled. "They showed our capacity for violence, but not our capacity for healing. They saw our predatory past, but not how we evolved beyond it." "Yet you chose to become a doctor," Thex observed, "despite knowing how other species would fear you." "Because of that," James corrected. "The day that video was recorded, when the council labeled us as dangerous, I was a teenager watching from Earth. I decided then that I would prove them wrong. Not with words, but with actions." Thex moved closer to the screen, watching as it showed more historical footage of human medical achievements. "Your people ran toward diseases that could kill you," she noted. "Pursued treatments for years without giving up. Used your hunting instincts to track down cures." "That's what the council didn't understand," James said quietly. "Yes, we're persistent hunters. But what we hunt isn't always prey. Sometimes we hunt cures. Sometimes we hunt solutions. Sometimes we hunt ways to make life better." Thex turned to him, her scales now showing a deep purple of respect. "Perhaps," she said, "it is time for a new presentation to the council. One that shows all aspects of human nature." James smiled. "Maybe. But first, I have patience to heal. Actions speak louder than words. That's another human saying." As Thex left his quarters, James looked once more at the first contact video. The fears and prejudices of that day still echoed through the station's corridors. But slowly, one patient at a time, one colleague at a time, he was showing them a different side of humanity, a side that hunted death itself and refused to give up until life won. The explosion rocked Outpost Station 47 with such force that James was thrown from his bed. Red emergency lights flashed as the station's AI announced in multiple languages. "Critical failure in engineering section Delta. Multiple casualties reported. All medical personnel report to emergency stations." James was moving before the announcement finished. He grabbed his emergency medical kit and ran into the corridor, where chaos had already taken hold. The station's gravity was fluctuating, making every step uncertain. "Status report." he shouted into his comm unit as he ran. Commander Pierce's voice cracked through static. Reactor cooling system failure. Engineering section is cut off. We have at least 20 workers trapped inside, multiple species. Temperature in there is rising fast. James reached the medical bay just as Thex and other alien medical officers arrived. The first casualties were already being brought in, those who had escaped the initial blast. The intersection is too hot. One of the rescue workers reported their environmental suit smoking. Our suits can't handle it. And the radiation levels. James checked the environmental readings on the nearest display. The numbers made his blood run cold. The temperature in the engineering section was approaching levels that would kill most species on the station. But there was something else, something that made his human biology relevant for the first time since arriving. Humans, he said slowly, we evolved on a planet with higher radiation levels than most council worlds. And our bodies can handle higher temperatures. The other medical officers turned to look at him. Thex's scales had gone pale. You cannot be suggesting. I can survive in there longer than any of your rescue teams, James said, already moving to the emergency suit storage. And those trapped workers don't have time for us to wait for specialized equipment. Dr. Walker, Commander Pierce's voice came through again. That's not just against protocol. It's suicide. James pulled out the station's most robust environmental suit. It wasn't designed for the conditions he was about to face, but it would buy him some time. How long until the reactor goes critical? There was a pause. 30 minutes. Maybe less. Then we don't have time to argue. James started putting on the suit, his movements quick but precise. I need everyone here to prep for multiple trauma patients. Different species will need different treatments. Vex, you're the best with crystalline beings. There were at least 5 of them on the engineering crew. James, Vex said, using his first name for the first time, your human aggression is admirable. But this is not a battle you can win. He sealed the suit's helmet, checking the systems. That's where you're wrong. This is exactly the kind of battle humans were made for. We don't just fight with weapons. We fight with determination, with the will to protect. The station shuddered again. Through the walls, they could hear distant screams. You really mean to do this? Pierce asked. To risk everything for people who still fear you. James checked his medical kit one last time. Sir, with respect, that's exactly why I have to do it. They fear us because they think we're killers. Today, I'm going to show them what humans really fight for. He turned to the other medical officers, who were watching him with a mixture of fear and awe. Have trauma teams ready. I'm bringing them out. As James headed toward the sealed doors of Engineering Section Delta, he heard Thex speaking behind him. Now I understand. Their aggression isn't about destruction at all. It's about preservation. The doors opened, releasing a wave of scorching heat. James took a deep breath inside his helmet and stepped forward. Today, he would show them that humanity's so-called bloodthirst could save lives instead of taking them. The hunt for survival was on. The heat hit James like a physical wall as he entered Engineering Section Delta. His environmental suit's temperature gauge was already climbing toward the red zone. Through the smoky haze, emergency lights pulsed weakly, casting strange shadows across twisted metal. Life signs detected, his suit's computer announced. Multiple signatures, 20 meters ahead. Warning. Suit integrity at 80%. James moved forward, using his natural human endurance, the very trait that made others fear his species, to push through the suffocating heat. His predator's eyes, as the aliens called them, proved invaluable in the low light, picking out shapes and movements. This is Dr. Walker. He called out through his suit's speakers in multiple languages. Call out if you can hear me. A weak, crystalline chiming sound responded from his left. He found 3 of the crystal beings huddled behind a fallen beam, their surfaces clouded with stress fractures. Near them, 2 other aliens lay unconscious, a scaled engineer and a multi-limbed technician. I'm here to help, James said, already pulling out his medical kit. "Can any of you move?" The crystal beings chimed nervously at the sight of him. Even now, even here, he could sense their fear. But there was something else in their resonance. Hope. "Warning," his suit announced. "Suit integrity at 60%. Radiation levels increasing." James worked quickly, applying emergency patches to the crystal being's fractures and giving the unconscious aliens emergency anti-radiation shots. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, but not the gentleness other doctors used. This was human medicine at its most primal, aggressive in its speed, relentless in its dedication. "Commander Pierce," he called through his comm. "I found 5 survivors. Sending coordinates for emergency transport." "Understood," Pierce replied through static. "But James, there are more life signs deeper in, and you have less than 15 minutes before the reactor goes critical." The crystal beings and unconscious aliens vanished in the shimmer of emergency transport. James checked his suit readings. 50% integrity, temperature still climbing. He pushed forward. The next 10 minutes became a blur of heat, rescue, and desperate medical treatment. James found 4 more groups of survivors, working with the same focused intensity that his ancestors had used to track prey across endless savannas. But now that relentlessness served a different purpose, saving lives instead of taking them. "Final warning," his suit blared. "Integrity at 20%. Immediate evacuation required." "James," Pierce's voice cracked through. "Get out of there. The reactor's going to blow in 3 minutes." But James's suit had picked up one more life sign. Weak, flickering. But there, his predator's instincts locked onto it, refusing to let go. He found the last survivor behind a melted control panel. A young maintenance worker of Thex's species. Their scales were badly burned, but they were alive. Warning. Suit breach imminent. James's skin was starting to blister from the heat leaking through his failing suit. Every breath felt like fire, but he lifted the alien worker, holding them as gently as his trembling arms would allow. "Final survivor found," he gasped into his comm. "Emergency transport. Now." The transport beam caught them both just as his suit's integrity failed. They materialized in the medical bay, where Thex and the other doctors rushed forward. As James collapsed, he heard the young worker speaking weakly to Thex. The human. He moved like a hunter, but his hands were healing, not hurting. "Yes," Thex replied, her scales showing patterns of deep respect as she helped James onto a medical bed. "We have much to learn about these humans. Their fierceness in saving lives matches any predator's fierceness in taking them." James tried to smile despite his burns. The station shuddered as the reactor was ejected safely into space, but he had already won his real victory. Today, he had shown them that human aggression could be the strongest force for preservation in the galaxy. James woke up in his own medical bay, his skin still tender from the radiation burns. The first thing he noticed was unusual. His room was full of flowers. Not Earth flowers, but alien equivalents, crystalline growths that chimed softly, color-changing vines, and floating light spheres that hummed with gratitude. "The crystal beings sent those," Thex's voice came from beside his bed. "They say it's their highest form of thanks. The spheres are from my people. You saved one of our younglings." James tried to sit up, wincing at the movement. "How many?" 27, Thex replied, her scales showing bright patterns of joy. "You saved 27 lives, Dr. Walker. Every single person trapped in that section survived." Before James could respond, the door chimed. A group of alien medical officers entered, species that had previously avoided him. One of them, a floating cloud-like being, moved forward. "We have reviewed your medical logs," it said through the translator. "Not just from yesterday, all of them. 3 years of records." James stayed quiet, watching. The cloud being continued. "You have treated 2,342 patients since arriving. Your success rate is the highest on the station. But what caught our attention was this. A hologram appeared, showing James's treatment statistics. You took the most difficult cases, another medical officer noted. The ones others thought were hopeless. And you never gave up on them. That's what humans do, James said simply. We persist. Like predators, Thex added, but her tone was different now. But not in the way we thought. You hunt death itself, chasing it away from your patients with the same determination your ancestors used to chase prey. The door chimed again. This time, Commander Pierce entered with two official-looking aliens wearing council insignia. James recognized their species. They were from the same council board that had first labeled humans as dangerous. Dr. Walker, one of them said, news of your actions has reached the council. We have reviewed the station's records and security footage. It seems we may have misunderstood certain aspects of human nature. James thought of the first contact video he had watched so many times. We're not just what you saw in those historical records, he said. Humans are complex. Yes, we can be aggressive. Yes, we evolved as hunters. But we learned to use those traits for more than just killing. A second council member stepped forward, holding a data pad. Your medical logs show something fascinating. In crisis situations, your vital signs match those of human hunters in pursuit. Your focus becomes absolute. You track symptoms like prey. But all of this is used to save lives. Thex finished. The very traits we feared make him an exceptional healer. One of the alien doctors who had previously avoided James moved closer to his bed. Would you be willing to teach us? To show us how to use such determination in our own practice? James looked around the room. At the gifts from grateful patients, at his fellow medical officers who now sought his guidance, at the council members who were rewriting their understanding of humanity. He smiled. Of course, he said. That's another thing about humans. We love to share knowledge, to teach, to help others grow stronger. Perhaps, the first council member said, it is time for a new assessment of humanity, one that shows all sides of your nature. James thought of all the other humans who would come after him. Doctors, teachers, explorers, all of them carrying the weight of humanity's reputation. Thanks to his actions, they might find a warmer welcome. We're ready when you are, he said. Just remember, sometimes the fiercest-looking creatures are the ones most dedicated to preserving life. 1 month after the engineering crisis, Outpost Station 47 was a different place. The medical bay that aliens once avoided was now constantly full of visitors. Some came for treatment, others to learn, and many simply to observe the human doctor at work. Today, James stood before a group of alien medical students, including representatives from 15 different species. Even the crystal beings, traditionally the most cautious around humans, had sent 3 of their younglings to learn. The human body, James explained, pointing to a holographic display, shows interesting changes when we're trying to save a life. Our hearts beat faster, our focus sharpens, our strength increases. The same responses that once helped us hunt now help us heal. A cloud being student raised an appendage. But how do you control such aggressive instincts? How do you stay gentle enough to heal? James smiled. Watch, he said, turning to his current patient, a young scaled being with a complex fracture. His movements became quick and precise, his eyes intensely focused, but his hands remained steady and careful. See how he tracks the injury pattern. Thex commented from the back of the room. Her scales showed teaching colors now, like a predator following tracks. But the goal is to eliminate pain, not to cause it. The students watched in fascination as James worked. His hunter's focus, as they now called it, was no longer something to fear, but something to study and understand. Humans, James continued as he finished treating the patient, have always been protectors as well as hunters. In ancient times, we guarded our injured. We carried them to safety. We developed medicine because we refused to let death take our people without a fight. One of the crystal students chimed softly, their way of showing understanding. Like how you fought death itself in the engineering section. Exactly, James said. Humans don't just fight with weapons. We fight with knowledge, with determination, with healing. Our ancestors' aggressive traits evolved into something more, a fierce drive to protect and preserve life. The door opened, and Commander Pierce entered with another council observer. These visits had become common as the council studied this new understanding of human nature. Tell me, Dr. Walker, the observer said, how do other humans use these protective instincts? James thought for a moment. Some become doctors like me. Others become rescuers, rushing into burning buildings to save strangers. Some become teachers, fighting against ignorance with the same determination. The drive is the same, to protect, to preserve, to make things better. Fascinating, the observer noted. And the hunting instincts. Help us track diseases to their source, James explained. Help us pursue cures relentlessly. Help us chase away death itself. We're still hunters, yes, but what we hunt has changed. A small alarm beeped. One of James's patients needed attention. The students watched as he instantly shifted into his focused state, moving with purpose toward the source of the alert. His movements were quick, precise, predatory even, but every action was aimed at helping, not harming. I understand now, the crystal student chimed. The human's intensity is not for killing. It is for saving. Yes, Thex agreed, her scales showing deep colors of wisdom. They are hunters of death, chasers of darkness, protectors of life. We feared their nature without understanding its true purpose. As James worked to stabilize his patient, he heard the continuing discussion behind him. The fear that had once filled the station was being replaced by something new. Respect, understanding, and even admiration. The council observer made one final note before leaving. Perhaps humanity's greatest hunt has been their pursuit of ways to preserve life rather than take it. And in that hunt, they have become something unique in our galaxy. Predators who protect. 1 year after the engineering crisis, James stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. The same room where humans had first been labeled as dangerous predators now held a very different kind of meeting. The council chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species. Among them sat former patients from Station 47, medical students he had taught, and even the crystal beings he had saved from the engineering section. Vex stood beside him, her scales showing formal presentation patterns. Members of the council, James began. 21 years ago, in this very room, humanity was classified as a species to be feared. You saw our predatory past, our capacity for violence, our relentless nature. Today, I stand here to show you what else these traits can mean. The main display activated, showing footage from the engineering crisis. But this time, it wasn't shown as evidence of human aggression. Instead, it demonstrated something else. The same predatory focus being used to track down survivors, the hunter's endurance being used to carry injured aliens to safety. In the past year, Thex addressed the council. Station 47 has become a center for medical training. Dr. Walker's methods have been adapted by 15 different species. Emergency response times have improved by 40%. Survival rates for critical cases have doubled. The crystal being James had first treated stood up. Its voice chimed through the chamber. We feared humans because they were hunters. Now we understand. They hunt death itself, and they teach others to do the same. James activated the next display, showing medical teams across the galaxy, mixed groups of humans and aliens working together, using human determination and alien wisdom to save lives. Humanity's traits, James continued, evolved not just for hunting, but for protecting. We are persistent, yes. Aggressive, sometimes. But these same traits drive us to chase away darkness, to fight disease, to pursue knowledge that can save lives. Commander Pierce, now a liaison between humans and the Council, stepped forward. We propose a new classification for humanity. not as predators to be feared, but as guardians to be welcomed. Our aggressive nature exists to protect. Our hunting instincts serve to heal. Our determination works to preserve life. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had once feared humans were now speaking in their defense. Medical officials presented data showing the improvements that human techniques had brought to their facilities. The head council member raised a hand for silence. Dr. James Walker, they announced, your actions have shown us that we must judge species not just by their traits, but by how they choose to use them. Today, we officially reclassify humanity as a guardian species, with full rights to establish medical facilities throughout council space. Cheers filled the chamber. James saw tears in the eyes of other human representatives. They knew what this meant for their species' future in the galaxy. Later, as they left the chamber, Thex approached him. You have changed how the galaxy sees humanity, she said. But more importantly, you have changed how we understand ourselves. Any species can choose to use their nature for good. James smiled, thinking of the young medical students, human and alien, who would now train together. That's the real victory, he said, not just changing how others see us, but showing that every trait, even the ones we fear, can be used to protect and heal. As they walked through the council halls, aliens no longer moved away in fear. Instead, many reached out to touch him, a sign of respect in their cultures. They no longer saw a predator walking among them. They saw a healer, a protector, a human who had shown the galaxy that the fiercest hunters could become the most dedicated guardians of life itself.